technology. There's also other rationales. John has explained his rationale that he don't want to have 1 foot of light rail in Virginia Beach. He'd rather make the transition to a new technology if you got to do it. Not that he even wants to do that, but if you're going to do it, at Newtown. My rationale, and this is where we kind of enjoy our little debates, is I believe that you need to make that big transition at Union Station. And that Union Station in Town Center helps bridge the quadrants. And if you read those MOS, and you read those paragraphs, and you get to read all this stuff later, you'll see that it provides the development to the other quadrants of our town center. And if you could create that town center, major firms will come to Virginia Beach. They will set up their headquarters. We'll have quadrants like we have currently in the southeast quadrant, develop in the other quadrants. So, what is the cost share arrangement that currently exists so that we can say, where am I in that process? Well, we confirm we're not going to get any federal participation at least before we say on our charts 2020, be about the earliest anybody had even given us an audience on funding. And I say it'll be 2024, 2028. Holy cow, it just won't happen. So, the SecTrans asked for a 50-50 cost share, okay? That estimate sheet I gave you says it's 310, and that's all the soft costs of creating a Union Station too. And that's generally hard to get the state to buy in to do that, but they've agreed. They'll pay for that because they see the economic value of creating a really architectural, pleasing center of gravity Union Station that helps promote development. And so this is their commitment, and if it's 50-50, that's ours. They're not going to support anything but light rail. They'll take their dollars and go home if we don't do light rail. We had to cancel the PPA process and go to an RFP, which didn't really, we didn't die on our sword on that. But that affects the maglev proposal too, and I'm gonna brief a little bit about that and then let you out of here. Oh, and this is going to begin in July. Is we're going to sit down at HRT with the state and try to negotiate how this money piece is going to happen. And it'll be contingent upon the appropriation of the city council. So if the city council elects not to participate, it won't transition. Okay, so let's talk about that maglev video that we got to watch earlier. In the PPA, they submitted a proposal that said, hey, we'll come build you maglev from Pacific Avenue at the Dome site, past the parking areas, past the convention center, and then we'll cross over and we'll terminate a pilot right there in front of the convention center. And so we got to negotiating with them, the staff, and we went down there, and Mr. Moss and 3 other council members went down there, and we went to Powder Springs. We needed to see what they got, and yeah, they really got a system, and Joel, you were down there, and it really does work. It rides back and forth, and then you see what you saw in Japan, and because we were worried about radius of turns, and remember that Japanese thing, they had a 90-degree turn, then another 90-degree turn, and you saw how high they were up in the air. Well, we decided to have a conversation with ACS, and said, are you willing to build a pilot that goes from Pacific Avenue, comes down to the convention center, that goes around what could be an arena site, that would line up on Burnett, go down the middle of Burnett, go over I-264 and terminate up here at where a station would be at Laskin Road on Burnett. Are you willing to build that on your dollar? Are you willing to get it federally approved for federal cost sharing dollars? And if not, post a bond to tear it all down and make it disappear. And they said, yeah, we'll spend $60, $70 million of our own money to do that. Well, and we'll post a bond that says if it doesn't get approved, we'll tear it down. Okay, that's kind of hard not to want to have another conversation, right? I mean, but the deal is, if they get federally approved, what do we have to do? We got to buy that piece, right? And we commit for the long-term extension from Laskin to Town Center, the goal line. Remember the system? The goal line to the beach. And so when the PPA goes away, we RFP that out. They're not the only maglev system out there. Lenima wants to come in and bid on this. So now I got AMT and now I got Lenima. So we got competition going on. But it isn't about the line. It has nothing, in my mind, nothing to do about the line. How do we go about doing that? Well, first of all, we need to watch what's going down in Orlando. They made a bid. They were the only bidder on a transit system that connects the Orlando International Airport to the Orange County Convention Center with a connection to the Disney monorail. Their proposal said we'll pay you 15 cents a rider for 99 years. We'll build it on our dollar, but you got to give me the land. They turned around and says, that's good. You got past square one. We accept that. Florida Department of Transportation's right in there, fully supporting this. City of Orlando, the County of Orange, all supporting this. They have to develop a preliminary engineering layout that says this is where we want to go. Because they got to approve the land, they got to give them. And then they'll ink the deal. So we got to get what? We need to figure out our scope of the pilot. And it goes down that direction. We need to commit this. And this is what it's all about, guys, right here. This is Hansen's, this is what I think it's all about. Not everybody agrees with me, but I think it's all about that. Because if you change the transit system of the United States to maglev, and you can build 3 times as much track as you have currently being invested by the feds and the states and the locals, then the entire transit system of America is going to change to that technology. And there will be 4 or 5 major maglev companies that spring up across America to do this, because they'll transport this technology to Brazil and to Europe, and it'll do away with that conventional light rail system. That assembly plant initially will require 300,000 square feet to put 20 vehicles in assembly at the same time. It takes 118 American-based technology companies providing components to build these vehicles. 50% of those 118 companies want to relocate to wherever that new first major maglev vehicle assembly plant gets put. We have 750,000 square feet of vacant Lillian Vernon warehouse space ready to go. They'll sign a deal with the pilot that says we will lease 300,000 square feet immediately with an option to lease 500,000 square feet. We will transform Virginia Beach to the major technology manufacturing center of the United States, and it will take 4 years for the other companies to formulate, catch up, and go down that road. Is the risk worth the results? Are we really want to be that technology leader? People laugh at us for having this conversation about maglev in the light of ODU. To include our own officials, both locally, other municipalities, as well as the state. We're not stupid. We still think there's some value here in running after this. So, it's neat to have transit, but I get. Suppose I'm the vice president of Caterpillar in Peoria, Illinois, and I grab my council member and I say, Councilman, I need 2.8 miles of transit for my workforce to get from your town center to my Caterpillar manufacturing plant and headquarters. I'm willing to cost share with you. Let's get on an airplane, let's go to Virginia Beach. I want to look at this maglev pilot they got down there. I'm going to go down there, and then I'm going to say, and I want to go look at this assembly plant. I want to see how this is doing. And then I want to go to ODU and TCC and see this whole vertical integrated package of engineers, business managers, operators, marketers, and managers that run this system, because I want to buy a full package of personnel, of equipment, and vehicles. And if I like it, I'm going to buy it. They buy it. 10 months later, they come back and their vehicle's coming off the assembly plant, and it's got the yellow and black Caterpillar, and their mayor and their Caterpillar executives take a picture, and we stick it on our pilot line, and it rides up and down Virginia Beach's light rail on a little marketing thing, and it rolls into Norfolk Southern. It gets loaded on the Norfolk Southern line, paying their vehicles are on their way to Peoria, Illinois, because they've been constructing that thing for 6 months, and that thing's done in about a year and a half. Can you imagine the technology development that we could be a spearhead of? We are looking at light rail. We're looking at transit. Right now, we are a city that wants to do this, maybe. But I'm not sure I want to buy the last buggy whip in America. I may have to buy the last buggy whip to connect what you currently have invested at the state. That's what the state's putting there, 50% on the line. And they won't let us have a conversation other than that. And maybe that's part of the deal. But part of the deal is also this thing, is figuring this thing out too. And they can both go on at the same time. So I get to my last chapter, funding. That's the that's the 800-pound gorilla in everybody's basket. It's not going to happen. You can't just default to the fourth bullet here, because it dies right there. If that's the first conversation out of the financial discussion, it's dead. This conversation's over. I appreciate the breakfast. I'm packing up and leaving. But that's not my belief. I believe you've got to look at. You have to have a myriad of options here. You've got to go down this road. And when I say this, I'm addressing, and I carefully chose that title, it's the local cost share. There's an assumption on top that, what if you create a transformation of transit system technology in America? How quick are the feds going to want to jump on that? You don't think Senator Warner and Kane are not going to just pound the table on this? They're going to want to have this. Because if you're firstest with the mostest, we've sat in a room with some folks, and Mr. Moss was there, they'll tell you, I've got $3 billion in contracts stacked right here on this table to be number 2. Everybody wants to be number 2. Nobody wants to be number 1. And oh, by the way, in confidence, the ACS president of North American Operations, a Spaniard, because they're headquartered in Madrid, in confidence told us, look, I got $3 billion in South American contracts. I want to be number 2. And that's when I really went to work on it, to say, look, I have a port. I can assemble those vehicles. I can load them on a ship. I can send them to wherever you want. If you build your assembly plant in Orlando, you can't get your vehicles anywhere. They don't have what we have to offer you. I've got the plant now. We've got packages and deal points built, ready to have this conversation. But let me explain this. There are current dedications that, for the good of Virginia Beach, have been in place for 20 years and have done an outstanding job. They've provided open space, they've provided agricultural reserve, they've provided funding for other beach projects, but they're all dedications. You're currently paying them. We need to relook those dedications, and we should be taking monies that we already pay every year as part of our taxes, and we should say, look, we got an A-, we got a B+ in our goals here. Let's consider that. Let's move some of those dedications to the new requirements of dedications and see how much of this funding that it could fund, so that we do not have to incur additional costs. Special service districts. John Moss came to council again and said, I believe that those that receive the benefits should help pay for the benefit. What a cosmic idea. It resonated with me. I've been using that line ever since. I've stolen it. In fact, I'm getting attributed for it and not giving him the credit. What a revolutionary, what a cosmic idea, I think. Okay. And then our analysis, our staff analysis is, as we look across all big cities, all emerging big cities, all wannabe big cities, all cities that want to go from being America's biggest town to a city, there's a commitment of a sales tax to support those economic development initiatives. Light rail is not really about transportation, right? No, I kind of agree. It's about economic development, right? It's about what can you do to spur that component. When you're talking about arenas, and you're talking about entertainment dome sites, and you're talking about headquarters hotels, and you're talking about blowing yourself up to be a Charlotte, every one of them use a sales tax commitment. That sales tax commitment has to be approved by the General Assembly and then approved by the City Council. Without a sales tax, we're not going to move this. We're not going to move this. We're not going to move any of the other parts. Because what will we default to? The last one, right? And that's DOA, if we don't put everything else in place. So there's a lot of work here. And I would encourage everybody here that says, okay, is there a financial plan that can be created that is acceptable to this organization? Is there a way that the return on that investment would be worth us to have an open-minded perspective about? Because there is the potential of huge economic growth for the city of Virginia Beach and the region. But this is the only way that we can accept that to be done. And that would be my parting request to you all to remain open-minded and to participate in this conversation. And so with that, yes, sir.
Well, first of all, good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You should meet with me because I can help you make your pro talking points for this better.
Okay.
One of the things that's not in your slides that's a 1,000-foot point, the operating expenses for light rail under the HRT model are borne 100% by the local city in which the light rail runs. There's no federal funding or state funding that subsidizes the subsidy of the riders on the rail. Okay, it isn't there in the model. Under this approach, because they're elevated light rail and they're automated, they have no drivers, they have no staff. That is 60% of the operating costs to run these trains. They're 60% less expensive. So from a point of practicality, you're an idiot if you don't do this over the HRT model because they're elevated. Second point, he talks about having to acquire all the land. We're the largest municipality in Virginia that doesn't have a housing and redevelopment authority because the General Assembly requires a referendum and we keep intelligently telling them no because we can't trust you with the power to take our property to give to developers. Okay, all right? You don't have to take the land to build these. The footprint for these things is very, very small. You can lease that property from the owners and pay them a stipend on the return for investment, and it doesn't have to be deeded to build these maglev systems. So that's another option in favor of this.
Marie, do you have a question?
I'm making a statement in that I'm supportive of a lot of what you're saying. A lot of this issue of what you're talking about, you're talking about the future of our city. And what's missing in the conversation, in my opinion, is City Council coming out and asking us what we want our city to be. There's an assumption we want to be the biggest in an urban city and we want to do all of these things. That may not be what the people who bought land and live here want for the future of our city, but people are hell-bent to do that. I like where you're going with this, and it is a smarter and more intelligent approach than I've been hearing for years and years and years. the final thing that you don't mention in there